True Sports Network. The Old Time Boxing Show, as always, is brought to you by Manscaped. Make sure you check out manscaped.com. Promo code TGT20 for 20% off your first purchase and free shipping. I'm your host for the Old Time Boxing Show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, boxing historian, Christopher Shelton. How you doing, Christopher?
Good. I'm really looking forward to this. Been trying to study Buster Mathis for a little bit. Sports Illustrated New York Times sort of agreed and said this is a guy that's psychologically complex. His things spook him and bother him in a way that's unusual with other heavyweights. So we'll see.
So why did you pick Buster Mathis for our episode today?
I couldn't quite figure out, and I still don't think I got a straight story on it, exactly how this guy could be so great against Chuvalo, and then 6 weeks later tank against Jerry Quarry, and there was, and I think it bothered me a lot. And then also I felt the guy, he really should have been representing America in the Olympics, and he didn't. And who's this chick in Detroit News? Vivian Balls. You know, they talk about Michigan Golden Gloves history in the amateur division. They don't even mention Buster Douglas. They mention Jake LaLanne. They mention a lot of people that are famous as pros, and they mention pro fights. But Buster Mathis is somehow being forgotten. In fact, when I mention his name to anybody, the only thing you remember when I go, remember his kid fought Mike Tyson and Burdick Bowe? Oh, yeah, I remember that. But don't remember the dad.
Yeah, and the dad...
Larry Merchant says can't hit. Well, he never got hit by him.
Yeah, and the dad was a lot more accomplished than, his
Absolutely.
son.
And the kid's accomplished. It's just the dad's more accomplished.
Yeah, you're talking about a dad here to beat Joe Frazier to win a berth on the 1964 Olympic boxing team. And actually, we've got a little footage there of that. If we can show it here. Hold on. I got to find it. Where did I go with it?
It's about twice as amateurs, and Mathis won both times. Great counterpuncher, 300-pound guy at the time. Now it's 3 rounds, and the first round, Mathis really pretty easily wins and dominates it. And the second round, Frazier gets hit with a 2-point deduction, which amateurs and pros are different. The pros, they give you 8 million warnings like Chuvalo, and you don't care. They know you're not serious about warnings. But in the amateur, they don't like when you hit low. Frazier hit low. I don't think necessarily on purpose, but he did, and they penalized him.
Yeah, the thing gets me is the way Mathis holds these hands way out here for some reason when he's fighting. And that got him in trouble a lot in his career.
Yeah, he did have things that that were unusual and spooky about him. One, I think that he took an injury and let it bother him more than certainly a Frazier would. If they got the same injury, Mathis would be really bothered by it, and Frazier would never mention it. And then blood really spooked Buster Mathis, whether it was his blood or the opponent's blood. It made him squeamish in an oddball way. And I think because of little things like that, which maybe not little things, but then people started adding to it and adding to already a guy who struggled with self-esteem issues, who was an orphan, and the people that sort of raised him, they died when he was young, and he struggled with Detroit cops were some of his early supporters, and then he wanted to play maybe defensive tackle for the Lions. Lions should have paid attention to this guy. Instead, they thought, why don't you box? And it turned out he was a good student. He was the star, incidentally. I could tell his chick over there in Detroit News, of the 1963 team. Going into the Golden Gloves, we got one star going into this. It's Buster Mathis. So then he's about 18. So at 17 or so, he must have been a tremendous boxer. Didn't win the Nationals. I don't know why. Frazier didn't either. A lot of great ones have. And amazingly, in 64, a guy did it from Cincinnati. Weiss Westbrook. But I don't know what happened to him, and I don't know why Mathis or Frazier didn't win.
Yeah, and when you watch this, the thing that stands out is the fact that Buster Mathis, the psychological problems probably had something to do with the weight, because really when you look at Buster Mathis's career, I think he'd have fit in the 1980s with Greg Page and Tony Tubbs and all those guys.
You're right. He would have won the championship and immediately lost it the next fight.
Yeah, which is what all those guys from Witherspoon, all of them.
You're right. That's so funny. That is funnier than hell. But you're absolutely right. He would have fit in with those guys. He would have won his championship that we're not sure what to think of it, and then lost the exact next fight. The thing about Frazier that I watched is it's interesting in amateur. He was sort of exciting going into this tournament because he was scoring knockouts. And I mean, the 3 rounds is not that easy to do. So, and Mathis was winning. But Frazier really is fighting like a pro fighter as an amateur. And it suited him well until, this one guy.
Yeah, and the thing that really stands out to me is number one, turn your computer down a little bit, Chris, because you're getting feedback when I talk, which is
Oh,
really loud in my ears.
no, I'll
But
step back a second. And I'm like probably yelling too. I'm getting too excited.
the thing that stands out to me when I watch this fight is it's really similar to Henry Tillman and Mike Tyson in the '84 Olympic box offs, where you can see the one guy is really an amateur fighter and the other guy is really a professional fighter. And when you look at both of these guys' career compared to Tillman and Tyson, it kind of parallels that, where the one who's going out looking for the knockout in the pros turns into be a legend, and the other guy who's a good Olympic boxer just turns into being an average boxer.
Well, I think, in my opinion, and we'll go through these fights. I think Mathis was above average, and I think Tillman got knocked out in the first round by Tyson when they fought as pros. Mathis, after 6 rounds, was leading Frazier as a pro, and he beat him 2 times before that. So I do believe that.
Well, the other thing to remember there is this, though. Henry Tillman really, as a pro, was a cruiserweight. I mean, he wasn't big enough really to fight as a heavyweight.
Right, and Buster Mathis sort of naturally would have been something above heavyweight, except heavyweight. Hey, super heavyweight, he'd be above that. He's like super beyond super heavyweight. Him and Butterbean category. Buster Mathis naturally, and maybe not naturally. He eats a lot of bad foods. The training in boxing to try to get him down to something a little bit more normal really helped him, because he looks in terrific athletic shape. Incidentally, just fantastic athletic shape. He is sort of a star, at least in Michigan at the time, not anymore. But he sure looks like he could lose some pounds, and he did. And it didn't seem like it's a weird thing the way he strategized him, because the only thing he thought about ever since Muhammad Ali was a famous amateur boxer too, was beating Muhammad Ali. That was like his whole mission in life. And Frazier was just the guy that he had to face sometimes.
Yeah, and Mathis there, he's a really talented guy.
He's a real talented guy. He's a good counterpuncher. He's a much more aggressive boxer than people suggested, and a much harder hitter. What he did, though, when he fought the really good fighters, the strong ones, he would counterpunch more. So because those are the ones people are naturally going to watch, the high-profile bouts, it sort of gave the impression that he's simply a counterpuncher, a guy who doesn't really hit hard. But when he wasn't taking on Joe Frazier's or Quarry's or Lyle's or even Ali or something, he charged at people and beat them up. He just realized that, charging Joe Frazier, and the other funny thing about Joe Frazier at the time is they're kind of how little he is. I don't really think of Joe Frazier as little, but at the time, it wasn't sure that Joe Frazier was going to become a star that he became. So he was a prospect, but he might be too little to become heavyweight champion. But I think he just looks little against Buster Mathis. I think he looks a lot more normal against, normal heavyweights.
Yeah, Buster Mathis was enormous. He would fit in with the day's heavyweights, especially with the tits and a little bit of a belly.
Oh, absolutely. And I think Frazier would be a star in any era of boxing. People love a guy who just charges out there, no nonsense, throwing punches. So I think Frazier, I'd love to see, Frazier versus various people at different times. But he was meant to his time, and it was Ali's time. And Buster Mathis was number 3 in the pros against those two. And 1 and 2 are legends, and number 3, even Michigan doesn't care about him anymore. That's sad.
Yeah, it was really sad. And when you watch this fight, the narrative I always heard was the fact that Joe Frazier basically won this fight. When I watched this is a close fight.
Yeah, I don't think so at all. I think what happened is Buster Mathis, I think, fairly easily won the first round. There's only 3, and in the second round, Frazier immediately got a 2-point penalty. So he's already looking at being 3 points down in the middle of the second round with only a round and a half to go. And Frazier fights like a pro, so he's really throwing a lot of body shots, which you don't usually do as an amateur. But Frazier does what he's going to do. In a stubborn sort of way. I think that Frazier's just a wonderful boxer. It's exciting, but you can't like Joe Frazier so much that you lose perspective. The fact that somebody might have had a good day, or it might be an unusual style opponent against him, that doesn't mean Joe Frazier sucks. Joe Frazier is better than Buster Mathis. When all is said and done, I pick Joe Frazier over Buster Mathis. That doesn't mean you have to make Buster Mathis a nothing, a piece of garbage, just to make your point about Frazier.
Yeah, and Daniel E. Muhammad, who's listening in or watching, said that Mathis didn't go far enough as a professional fighter. But I think there's limitations there when Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier are running the division. So I think a lot of that has to come into play. But you you really have
He
to
went as far as
wonder.
he could, which was number 3.
See,
And
I don't know if that's
two
true,
ahead of him.
though. I don't know if that's true because when you look at Mathis and the skill he had and his ability to box, in shape, 20 pounds lighter, I mean, his style would give Joe Frazier fits, I think.
And he spent his whole time and Customado's with him too. Again, they were really training as a boxer because they thought they were going to face Muhammad Ali, and they did believe that with Muhammad Ali, it's not a good idea to charge him like Sonny Liston did. It's better to box with him. So they really prepared themselves. Now they knew Frazier was a money ticket at some point because everybody wanted to see him fight again as pros. But Customado said, we're going to wait on that money ticket because right now it's not enough money, and plus we're preparing for Ali because we don't think Ali's as great as he is. We think that Billy Daniels had him in trouble. Whatchamacallit, a couple others had Sonny Banks knocked him down. That we don't think Clay's as invincible as people think, and we're setting up Buster Mathis, training him for Ali, though he never would have been good against Ali because one of the things Buster Flaws had is a tremendous flaw: wind. He struggled as the fight progressed and became longer, and it seemed to me his limit was about 6 rounds. He had about 6 good rounds in him, and then he starts to tire, and that's a real problem in the pros.
Yeah, in his first 22 fights, he fought a bunch of nondescript guys. Probably his toughest competition was Bob Stallings, who he fought in his 4th fight, won a unanimous decision. And then about a year later, he fought Stallings again and won a split decision. But those first 22 fights are kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, kind of nondescript.
Well, I'll say this, at least for Bob Stallings, people don't remember. His record looked like one thing, but he faced a lot of tough guys. He knocked down Ernie Shavers and beat him. That wasn't an accident. That was in Madison Square Garden. And that at least heading into facing each other, Buster Mathis fought at Madison Square Garden 3 times and Frazier only twice. And one of those times with Frazier, he was knocked down twice in the first round by Bonavina that went the distance, which I think helped Frazier on some level to have gone through that experience. But nonetheless, Mathis, one of the other crazy things is the fans always booed him. They always booed him. They did throughout his career. Whatever tapes are left that have audio, when the bout's over, they're going to boo Buster Mathis, even though he's really not doing anything that they can understand why. But the fans, they root for his opponent. They look at him and they root for his opponent. But anyway, he fought Ron Marsh. Ron Marsh is a great fighter, who offensive lineman.
Well, and real quick, we can go ahead and we can show a couple minutes of the Ron Marsh knockout, which I think was the 3rd or 4th round.
4th round, knocked him down in the 3rd round. And Marsh was a guy with only 1 loss, a big strike and a knockout record. A guy who more famous in Milwaukee, but he played for Kansas, blocked for Gale Sayers.
Yeah, and talk about that a little bit. He played at, Gale Sayers played at Kansas, correct? The Kansas.
Yep, exactly. He was the offensive lineman who blocked for him and made a little bit of a name for himself there. And then he moved to Milwaukee, so he became really Milwaukee's boxer. But at the end of his life, he went back to Kansas. He was a school teacher. The day after he lost, the next day, he has to go to work. He can't go to a hospital. He's got to go to work. He's a teacher, a phys ed teacher. Now, I know the joke. Those who can do, those who can't teach, those who can't teach Jim. Well, I think Ron Marsh would be offended by that because the students after he passed away said, this man really cared about us. He made us think. He gave us self-esteem. This is a good guy.
Yeah, and the thing that stands out to me here is Buster Mathis is not in terrible shape in this fight.
Oh, no. In fact, he's in really good shape for all his fights because he has to follow regimens that he doesn't like. And Customato was ruthless. But he said there's only 3 things he had thought about for the rest of his life. And one of the 3 was when they dumped Customato before the Frazier fight. Buster Mathis thought that was a mistake in retrospect, but he hated the regimen. He hated, that was like prison. Customato ran this thing like a prison camp. It takes to Buster Mathis' thinking. Even though there were people like Jose Torres, Jim Jacobs was brought in, people that you can talk to if you're that unhappy. But he did think Customato was loyal and he cared about him and was trying to do the right things. He just didn't. He didn't like not eating. He liked food. He wanted to eat. I kind of is there drugs? Yeah, his drugs are food, and I know that food can be dangerous, and especially dangerous to Buster Mathis because he liked everything that wasn't good for you.
Yeah, you go to Walmart and find out how dangerous food is.
Yeah, and I got a gallbladder thing where it took doctors a little while to figure it out and go, that was hurting me and killing me was food.
Yeah. I mean, the food a lot of times worse than most of the drugs that they give you.
You're right. It is a drug. And Buster Mathis admitted it was a drug. That when he got unhappy, when he got sick, whenever he wanted to eat. And with Customato, he was unhappy and they wouldn't allow him to eat. So Then he didn't talk. Then he pouts. And then it becomes kind of difficult to deal with because you can't communicate with him very easily. Though he was coming in the weight they wanted him to come in. He was sort of doing what they wanted him to do. And then he, which was beat up kind of easy guys. I'm still sort of struggling with who they were setting him up with at a certain level. It just didn't seem like they were still setting him up for a championship. They weren't setting him up for 15-round fights. He just didn't seem like he was. He always got winded early in his career, later in his career, when he got in better shape. He always had problems with wind after the 6th round.
Yeah, and I think that's what I meant by, Bob Stallings and Marsh are the best guys to be fought until they get to there, because you got to prepare a guy to be a world champion also. They didn't do that with Buster Mathis, and Buster Mathis did get his shot at the New York State Athletic Commission Heavyweight Championship. I think this was the title fight, correct?
This was the title fight, and it was going to be the heavyweight champion in 6 states, and the other 44 states were going to go by whatever ABC's tournament. Though I'm not sure ABC's tournament, Joe Frazier declined, which they pointed out. They didn't even mention Buster Douglas where they declined it. The tournament, these guys already fought before the tournament started, so Frazier's decline was natural. He's already heavyweight champion in a sense, and Buster Mathis just, why should he go through a tournament? He's the guy who should be fighting. If anybody thinks Frazier's the champion, then Buster Mathis should be the one fighting him. And so it was a decent payday, but Frazier got paid a lot more. Frazier got paid for fighting him, like, what was it? I think Buster Mathis got $75,000, and I think Frazier got $175,000. Big paydays. And in 6 states said whoever wins this, especially New York, whoever wins this is heavyweight champion. And the other 44 said it was going to be somebody who wasn't these two.
Yeah, and if you watch this, Buster Mathis is giving him all Joe Frazier wants now. This is the 6th round of their heavyweight title fight. I think it was in 1968. And when you watch this fight, once again, anybody that thinks Buster Mathis is a joke needs to watch this.
No, think about it. This is the 3rd meeting. The first 2 times Buster Mathis wins, and after the 6th round, Buster Mathis is leading. Now, if nothing else, that's not a chump. When you're facing Joe Frazier, there's only 3 people who can claim a winning record against Joe Frazier: Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, and Buster Mathis.
Yeah, and outside of Buster Mathis, the only 2 guys really in Frazier's prime that gave him trouble were probably Oscar Bonavena, who dropped him a couple times, and Jerry Quarry, who fought Joe Frazier for the title after this in a fight that is kind of the Hagler-Hearns version to me of the heavyweight division, because Frazier-Quarry was a great fight for about 3 or 4 rounds, and then Frazier was just in too good a shape for Quarry.
Yeah, and it's a weird one. I don't even know exactly how to address it because I had to look at it from different angles. That clearly, after this tournament ended with 8 people and Jimmy Ellis came out the victor, New York had made their decision, which was different than California. California was really pissed off at Jerry Quarry. That he's a California guy. They're really pissed off. They thought he got a win over Floyd Patterson he didn't deserve. But New York's not pissed off at Jerry Quarry. New York loves Jerry Quarry. They love him because he's white. He's the great white hope, not Chuvalo, not anybody else. He's the great white hope. And it's all excited about Jerry Quarry and getting Jerry Quarry against Frazier. I always think, well, you don't need Buster Mathis for that. Yes, they do, because they felt that they wanted Buster Mathis' credibility and they wanted that credible win on Jerry Quarry's record. And I think, well, that's an awful lot of confidence in a guy that's going to go in more than a 2-1 underdog to be that sure he's going to beat Buster Mathis. Anyway, it became oddball, especially the way Chuvalo would eventually fight Mathis and stuff like that. That the Quarry Frazier thing, what was going on to set that up was everything on the up and up board. And I'm not sure if we could see the Quarry Mathis fight, we would see Quarry dominate. I assume, and Mathis doesn't dispute that. He says, I hurt my finger in the 1st round. And he's an excuse. The guy beat me fair and square. Then again, with Chuvalo and Mathis, Chuvalo cheated a lot of low blows, a lot of hurt and pain. Meanwhile, Mathis had to go right back out after that fight, and Chuvalo had 7+ months to rest. I don't know. Yeah. It's oddball and stuff like that, but nonetheless, the 1st round, Quarry Frazier, fantastic. It's just where the shenanigans going on involving New York and Madison Square Garden, Al Braverman, and those kind of people. We're really going to make sure this fight happens with the best, most possible hype and excitement.
All right, Buddy gives like my Walmart comment. Of course, Walmart is the king of pajamas and yoga pants for oversized plus women. Keith Jimmy says Mathis was a good boxer, very fast for his size. What happened in Chuvalo Mathis fight? Was George disqualified? We'll get to that in a little bit. We're actually going to show a little bit of that fight also. So I want to thank everybody who is watching right now. We really appreciate it. This is actually the ending of the fight between Frazier and Mathis right
And
now.
just to throw it out there, as against a Swedish guy, but the fight right before this for Buster Mathis knocked him out in 36 seconds in Sweden. Sweden hadn't been so mad at American until 10 years later when John McEnroe took his racket and started knocking over all their benches and cups and everything. But anyway, Mathis wiped out the fight in 36 seconds.
Bjorn Borg won most of those matchups with McEnroe until the end of McEnroe's career, so they can't be too pissed.
Yeah, but it was still great to see him in Sweden, Sweden of all places, taking his racket and just smashing and knocking over everything like a kind of answer the question, jerk to the judges.
Yeah, that's when tennis was good. It was more like boxing.
It was, you know what? It is fun to have that kind of excitement, and boxing has that. And Chuvalo and Mathis, it went over a line, but for the most part, it's okay to kind of have a little bit more of an excitement level and stuff. And tennis, you're right, too sedate. Boxing, you kind of expect the unexpected. You just never expect a guy's going to fly in on Riddick Bowe and Evander Holyfield and land his little sky thing into people. You never know what's going to happen.
Man. All right, after the Joe Frazier fight, he has to go back to the drawing board. He comes back. He fights Mel Turnbow. Mel Turnbow's a guy that was 8-7, but Chris, it seemed like every one of his 7 losses was damn near against a Hall of Fame or a top 10 contender.
Absolutely. I would tell people out there strongly, look at a record, not that carefully. When we talked about, was it Ray Mercer? We had to bring up the Marion Wilsons, the Jesse Fergusons, the Burt Coopers. Those are great fighters. It doesn't always look like it because their record doesn't say that. It's because they're intentionally set up to be a tough opponent and lose. They're not paid to lose, but you expect them to lose, but only because they're a really tough opponent. Then you see somebody with an 18-1 record, and Mercer could knock him out of the ring with a jab. The records you got to be a little bit careful with. And Turnbow's one of them. The fight after Frazier, because Turnbow made it to the 7th round. Now, as an amateur, you don't go 7 rounds, so that means that's only the 3rd time somebody took Buster Mathis to the 7th round. And Turnbow did fight a lot of great heavyweights and stuff like that. And somebody I know, I think actually his father, it was the coach of some of their kids and stuff like that.
Mel Turnbow's son, Santino Turnbow, actually played for me for the Northern Kentucky River Monsters, which was a professional arena football team. He was a linebacker. He turned a professional boxer, I think, at like the age of 35. He actually got a shot against Efe Ajaba. He got knocked out in the 1st round, but that's a little bit of a connection there. Mel Turnbow was from Cincinnati. He had a great amateur career. He was a really good fighter. It gets overlooked just because of the record, but
because of the record, which is ridiculous. You could ignore Bob Stallings the same way. How in the world could Ernie Shavers lose to a guy like Bob Stallings? Because the guy's a hell of a fighter. Madison Square Garden doesn't stick in some piece of garbage against Ernie Shavers. They send in somebody tough, and that tough guy got the best of Ernie Shavers. The record doesn't reflect how great some of these boxers are, and the record over reflects others who just want to build up wins.
Yeah, then he beat James J. Beatty, who was not a terrible fighter, who actually beat Mel Turnbow. He beat Amos Lincoln, Dick Whipperman. Ain't a name like Dick Whipperman. You have to be tough or you're getting your ass kicked in school. Then he beat James J. Woody, another
one. James J. Woody, just to throw these names out there quickly, and Marsh and them. Sports Illustrated in '66, they saw Quarry, and they really reflected this might be our great white hope kind of thing that's going to happen. But they reflected who might be a great heavyweight for the future, and they listed 6 heavyweights, all with less than 10 wins. And he was one of them, along with Mathis, Frazier, and Quarry. So James Woody, these are good boxers. They eventually have to face each other, or you know what? Sometimes just like a Cincinnati guy, Weiss Westbrook. What the heck happened to him? You know what? It's tough that the match and styles make fights. Styles absolutely make fights.
Yeah, Keith Kimmy says Stander KO'd Shavers. Wish I could see that on YouTube. I wish I could see it too. I got the pleasure of interviewing Ron Stander, and I know that he wants to see that fight again too. He remembered it pretty well though when I talked to him. Make sure you check out our Legends of Boxing show where me and John J. Raspani, who works or he's the main guy at Max Boxing, actually interviewed Ron Stander. Really nice guy. And yeah, I would love to see that fight too. There's a lot of fights out there I would like to see. And then we get to let me
just say this one comment on that, is that Customato brought in the one person that would know where every fight is. He knew where it all was. Jim Jacobs. Jim Jacobs was brought into Buster Mathis' camp. Jim Jacobs eventually bought and owned something like 90% of the boxing films that existed, along with the best comic book collection, best handball player ever, an amazing, interesting, eclectic guy who's part of the Mathis team for a little while. Incidentally, he would know if you're alive, but he's not alive. Where are these fights?
Well, ESPN bought the entire collection, I believe, from
Oh, did they?
Jenkins
Well,
and
then.
Caden. Yeah. That's why when you go to ESPN Plus, you got a ton of boxing content there.
They do have a lot of boxing content.
Most of that was from the Jacobs and Caton library, which they did have almost everything. Because if you remember, they always talk about Mike Tyson, watching all the old films and everything. That's where he got the ability to watch the old films, with Jimmy Jacobs and Bill Caton's collection.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was a good bring-in. When Custom Auto brings in a Jim Jacobs, that did a lot to help Mike Tyson, because Mike Tyson didn't have to deal with this prison camp philosophy of D'Amato anymore, because also Jim Jacobs is a relaxing person. He did have all the films and stuff. He would have all that for Buster Mathis. It didn't quite all work out. They all thought, we've got our star here, and they picked the wrong star. It turned out to be Frazier.
All right, this is round one of Mathis against Chuvalo. Let's go ahead and watch it, because this is very interesting.
Several low blows by Chuvalo right off the bat. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. It wasn't on purpose. I think it's on purpose. I absolutely think he had a blueprint to hit this guy purposely low to see if he can get him riled up and scared or upset or something.
And you can't really blame him, because that was Mathis's MO.
Well, then Mathis came out really aggressive for this, and then what's going to happen is Mathis is going to grab the referee not once but twice, and he's also going to he's get tired of these low blows. He's going to purposely take a step back and hit Chuvalo as hard as he can in the nuts. I mean, after one round, both boxers should have been disqualified. Should have been over, but
it's a fight, Chris. Quit being so soft.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's getting out of hand in the sense that, and also Chuvalo was clearly injured 7+ months afterwards, and then forcing Mathis to fight Quarry. I don't think Mathis is allowed any kind of lax time, considering all these shots to the balls. Well, there you go. Back of the head. There's the back of the head. Thank you. Rabbit punches.
Yeah, but that's what Chuvalo did to Ali. That's what Chuvalo did to everybody. That's how Chuvalo fought. He was a tough, dirty fighter. He was a good, I think he was an underrated boxer, just like Mathis is, just like Jimmy Ellis was. I mean, George Chuvalo was a tough guy, but he did have some skill.
But I will say, he had some skills. He certainly is a tough guy. When Mathis hit him with that punch in the nuts, he didn't show nothing expression-wise. And also, though, that why, if people are upset in some level that Mathis defeated Frazier in the Olympic trials, amateur boxing is different. In Arizona, Golden Gloves, if somebody hits low twice, let's say they didn't do it on purpose, they'll stop the whole thing right away and say, you know what, this isn't going to happen here. I don't know what's going on, but we can't have that happen, or you're not welcome here. But pros don't do that. They just keep warning you, and Chuvalo keeps doing it anyway.
Well, Andrew Galata got disqualified for it a couple times.
But you know what? It also showed a side to Buster Mathis that maybe helped him, the passionate side. The fact that he was a fighter. Got to stay away from the referee, Mathis. Can't touch him. It's getting nuts. There he goes, pushes them. That's a problem. And of course, when eventually penalized and punished people, Mathis got all the penalties. Chuvalo, what happened? Nothing. He's got him beat up and stuff, all set up to fight Quarry. Now, again, I'm not taking anything from Jerry Quarry beating Mathis, because it doesn't appear Jerry Quarry did anything wrong. Jerry Quarry did not land illegally. Jerry Quarry landed solid punches, dominated the whole thing. Mathis even said, I have no problem with this. The better fighter won. But Chuvalo says something, Quarry says something interesting, that the two of them had sort of plotted out like they were a team of how to face Mathis. And Madison Square Garden wanted nothing to do with anything but Quarry Frazier. And it was racially. There's a racial component to that. Absolutely.
Well, you make more money with Jerry Quarry fighting.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny for someone that Muhammad Ali always called the white man's champion, that the black guy in the fight was Joe Frazier. In that Quarry Frazier exchange. And I don't know that white or black automatically votes for their own race or anything like that. I don't really know. But I do know that they got what they wanted. And then the fight of the year, because a great first round.
I believe this. It may be unpopular, but most times people will cheer for the person they identify with. And I don't think that's a racial component. I think that's human nature.
Yeah, I think so. I like to think that ultimately, when all said and done in boxing, that people, you're right. You kind of go for, I always like the underdog and stuff like that. Some people don't. I know a lot of people that just ride the favorite. In fact, one of the things I should mention about Frazier Mathis that I think is unusual is the 7th round, because the 7th round, it absolutely appears Buster Mathis knocks him down in fast. Absolutely. No knockdown, no knockdown. Okay, and you're thinking, is there a slip? Did they trip feet or something like that? Because people would be really quick to dismiss that in retrospect that Mathis could have landed a knockdown punch. But he did, except Frazier did the most goddamn amazing save I've ever seen in my life. It happens so fast, it's impossible to see unless it's frozen. He somehow gets his foot as he's falling to the ground. His foot traps his butt from touching the ground, and his gloves never touch the ground. It's like a football player where you go, it had to touch the ground, and you actually see the ball roll over, the players roll over each other, and nothing actually touched the ground. And that's what happened when Frazier gets knocked down. He doesn't actually get knocked down. That's why it's not a knockdown. Not because it's a slip or a tripping the legs. It's because he didn't get knocked down because he didn't let any part of his body some parts of your body has to touch the ground, a knee, your gloves, your butt, something, and he blocks it all incredibly like a pretzel, a human pretzel. Never see it in the highlight reels. Never mentioned. I think it's because people are scared that Mathis scored a knockdown, and he didn't. Frazier saved himself from a knockdown in the most amazing save I've ever seen in any level, anything. You might find somebody that could come up with an equal. You'll never find a better save than Frazier did for himself in the 7th round of that fight.
Yeah, and Keith wants to know what our opinion of Manuel Ramos is. And my opinion of Ramos is he's a guy that has some good wins. He beat Eddie Macon, which Eddie Macon, I think, fought everybody except for Muhammad Ali. He beat guys like James J. Woody. He beat Ernie Terrell. I think that he is a guy that is underrated. We all know that it didn't go well for him against Joe Frazier. But what's your take on Eddie Macon?
I would say
not
that
Eddie Macon, Manuel Ramos.
Right. Yeah. That I have to look at him just over the past week, and I people probably could hate this about me. Absolutely hate this about me. Before I really say something that's really too much on the limb, I really like to see the bouts over and over again and really get a fix on them. And I'm Latino. I don't like, people mention because they think something, whatever they think. But I do try to make sure that Latino fighters get, a fair shake, especially in the heavyweight division, because apparently we suck at that. We're just great flyweights. Joking. But I wouldn't mind taking a stronger look at them before I say too much, other than to get to that level against Frazier is an incredible ride. And then, boy, you lose one fight, and you're dismissed in a way that isn't fair. And hopefully, at least the home regions can remember you. And I hope that happened with Ramos. It didn't happen with Mathis.
Well, I think this. When you look at Ramos, he had a draw with Ron Stander. He fought everybody. He fought the Oscar Bonavinas of the world, Chuck Wepner, who he lost a unanimous decision to, Chuck O'Halloran, who was a tough guy, George Chuvalo. I think what you got here is a longer version of Mel Turnbow's career, because I think Mel Turnbow was a very talented guy, and I think Manuel Ramos was a very talented guy. And I don't think people understand what you got to be to get to this. And Ramos was a guy that probably lost like his last 20 fights because he was just going to make the money. So he's fighting Joe Bugner in Wembley. He's fighting Chuck Webner at Madison Square Garden. He's going to Argentina to fight Oscar Bonavina. He's going to Omaha, Nebraska to fight Ron Stander. He's going to Puerto Rico to fight Joe Roman, Jurgen Blin in Germany.
Good job. Good job.
I think he fought Jack Bodell. Terry Daniels, I think he fought at the Houston Astrodome. I think it was right before Daniels fought for the title. He lost a unanimous decision to Stander in a rematch. I mean, this is a guy that even fought Dwayne Bobbick and finished his career with, I think he lost to Bob Hazelton, but a fight or two before that, I think he lost to Bernardo Mercado, who would be the number one contender in 1980. And he lost that number one contender when he loses to Leon Spinks on the undercard of Ali Holmes. So I think Manuel Ramos is right down what you're talking about, where people don't really give them the respect they deserve. But he was a tough son of a bitch.
Absolutely. And again, I can't quite understand why it took so long for Latino in the heavyweight division. I don't know why Firpo couldn't beat Dempsey. Oscar Bonavino gives Joe Frazier a lot of problems, but then Jimmy Ellis kicks his ass. I don't understand these things, but Ramos, yeah, at least he could reach the level where he could win a championship, as opposed to some of these guys like a Turnbow or a Marion Wilson who are purposely not purposely take a dive, but they're set up so that their record looks really bad except they fought everybody, you know, that was tough.
Well,
You
a
know?
perfect example of that is a guy like Mike Weaver, who had like 9 or 10 losses when he got shot at Holmes, or a guy like Glenn Johnson in the light heavyweight division. And Buddy Gibbs, who's listening, thanks, Buddy, who's one of my favorite historians. You and Christopher. He says most of what you see on YouTube is from Jacobs. Keith Kimmy once again chimes in. Thanks for playing Mathis Chuvalo. And that brings us to Jerry Quarry in 1969. Keith wants to know our opinion of Quarry Chuvalo. Talk a little bit about Quarry and Chuvalo, Chris. I know there's no film that I can find on it.
No, it's been one of these things that
Or
people have been
Mathis
looking for.
Chuvalo, not Quarry Chuvalo. Oh, wait, he said Quarry
No,
Chuvalo.
it's Quarry Chuvalo. People have been looking around for years, and I didn't put a real serious effort into it ever because it's a real serious effort, and quite frankly, you got to deal with, you know, librarians and stuff, and they ain't as good as they were, you know, a long time ago. So it's a hassle, you know, if you're trying to find something. And that doesn't mean I can even find it. It just means I get a better idea. But yeah, it's been lost for a lot of years, and so all you have is what you have, and then you just sort of think, well, you know, things happen. Tapes get wiped over, or, you know, things like this. But then again, a lot of these other fights exist.
Hey,
that's a pretty high profile one to disappear.
Chris, so you know, I actually have a copy of Quarry and Chuvalo.
Man, you mean Quarry and Mathis?
No, but I got Quarry and Chuvalo. He asked about Quarry Chuvalo. And Keith, on YouTube, if you're watching that.
Oh yeah, no, I've seen that. Oh yeah, that was a good fight. We've covered that.
Yeah,
that was the one where Chuvalo won, and it was because Quarry also didn't understand the count. He got up a second late, thinking it was okay, and it wasn't okay. They counted you out. Quarry was counted out, and he didn't realize it because he got up a second too late. I remember that fight, and Chuvalo, did win. And Chuvalo, you know, if he would have beat Mathis, would have liked another rematch, and then after that, hey, you know, he might be looking at facing Frazier, and that would be a popular fight. It's just, for whatever reason, because all the losses on Chuvalo, he wasn't quite projected the same way as the Great White Hope. But though Chuvalo, Frazier, you know, to have a champion fight, I think that would be exciting.
Yeah. So where are we at here? We're at the Quarry and Mathis. We've got a few other questions here. Rate Adolf Pruitt. Frank, we can do that here in a minute, but this is the thing right now. Let's finish the Mathis Chuvalo, and then we'll go back to everybody's questions that don't pertain to that, and I'll actually give you a ranking of Adolf Pruitt. But Chris, we talked about the Quarry fight a little bit, Quarry and Mathis. What was your take on that? Did we go over that yet?
Just all I have to work on is the newspapers. So you do have more than one source. You have AP, UPI, Sports Illustrated, and stuff. There seems to be no doubt that Quarry dominated, you know, the what happened. He won every round according to the Associated Press, and the judges, I think, gave him pretty much 11 out of 12 rounds, and that Buster Mathis really didn't engage except for 2 rounds. Then he lost those 2 rounds, injured himself in the first round, and really just didn't engage. It's only 6 weeks after he looks amazing, spectacular as a boxer against Chuvalo, and it's sort of trying to figure out what happened. And I do remember that initially, because Mathis grabbed the referee and stuff, he was going to be suspended or something. You know, he got fined, but he was going to be suspended too. And somehow this gets wiped out because they're still figuring out in New York in Madison Square Garden and in the bigger scheme of how do we get Quarry Frazier. And I didn't quite realize or think about it, but I guess after Quarry had lost in the tournament to Ellis, the next few opponents, people didn't have much respect. They didn't think he beat anybody. You know, it was serious, and they wanted to beat a serious opponent. And Buster Mathis, the name, only 1 loss. You
know, Buster Mathis was actually the favorite going into that fight too.
More than 2-1. More than 2-1.
Yeah, and I haven't found any video of that ever, but from reading about the fight, it sounded like Quarry just kind of bulldozed Mathis and just tore up that body for 12 rounds. And I think the 3 judges all had it like 10-1 or 9-2.
Yeah, they did. And most Mathis got 1 round. AP gave him none. But also, I point this out because I got to point it out. Otherwise, you know, I'm doing something wrong on my thinking. That Chuvalo fight was dirty with Mathis. I mean, real dirty. And Mathis had to be seriously injured. And Chuvalo got 7+ months to rest. And they immediately stuck Mathis out there against Quarry. And Mathis didn't use excuses, but I'll give him excuses. Something that stinks.
It was 7 weeks later that they fought.
Yeah, well, that's it, and that's all. And quite frankly, if there wasn't this whole big thing about getting Quarry and Frazier, with Quarry getting the most possible hype behind him and trying to put something behind him, I wouldn't question it at all. And again, I don't question that Quarry did anything wrong. Could he have worked with Chuvalo, or could he worked with Madison Square Garden? Could he worked with something? But in the fight itself, I'm not saying he did anything wrong. It looks like he dominated him. Looks like he got him body punches, knocked him down in the second round. I sent the picture and stuff like that, so at least people can see the knockdown if they haven't seen anything. And Mathis kind of quit a little bit after he got hurt and after he got knocked down. Now that would be a Mathis kind of thing. It's just, again, this whole thing of getting the way Chuvalo fought. I originally tried to give him the benefit of the doubt in that first round. Now I don't give him the benefit at all. He went out there to cheat. He went out there to hurt and injure Buster Mathis, and then Buster Mathis, he got to rest forever. Chuvalo got to take a vacation for the next 7+ months, and meanwhile Mathis has to go right back in there against a really tough boxer, puncher, who's more than a 2-to-1 underdog. I wonder how the gamblers did. I have a feeling the gamblers did a little bit better than I don't know. I'd have to look at that because I would have been putting my money on Quarry if I knew that Mathis is all beat up. I watched the fight. It's not always easy to see these fights like we see them now. So some people could hear about a fight, but they didn't actually see it. If you saw it, you'd have to wonder if Mathis is beat up.
And right now we're watching the 6th round of Muhammad Ali against Buster Mathis.
Oh, this is a funny one because now Mathis retired after losing to Quarry for 32 months. All he wanted though still was Muhammad Ali. Now he's going to start shuffling because Muhammad Ali's bouncing around his feet and shuffling and stuff like that. So it's like a comedy show. Mathis going to start mimicking Ali's shuffle. There he goes. Starts playing with him on the shuffle. They're both shuffling together. It's kind of crazy. But Mathis came in 24 pounds over what he fought Quarry. Now, it doesn't mean he didn't come in to fight or anything like that. It means that he was at 300 pounds and he had to lose a lot of pounds just to get down to where he was. But nobody had to take him seriously as an opponent for Ali. And Ali, I do believe, did this out of compassion to fight Buster Mathis because he knows that Buster Mathis should have been the Olympic representative. He also knows that Buster Mathis went into hiding and just eating himself to death. And it reminds me of the Beatles song, John Lennon, Dear Prudence. Kind of get up, Mathis. I had to do that when I broke up with Colleen. I just laid on the ground for 2 months. Get up, get moving. So at least to get Mathis his fight, not only a payday, but also Mathis got to train. Mathis got to start eating healthy. He's got to start getting his head together. He's got to start, wake up. And I think Ali did that at a tremendous compassion, and because Mathis is writing just on his own over and over, and he kept saying in sports history all through the years, I just want to fight Ali. I just want to fight Ali. I just want to be in the ring with them. And I think Mathis, knowing he was losing still, he was so happy that Ali took him seriously enough just to pay attention to him and give him this day and give him a chance to pull himself together again. That wasn't an act of Ali's camp. That was an act of Muhammad Ali alone. He didn't listen to anybody's advice on this. Muhammad Ali's going with what he wanted to do, and he wanted to see this guy he liked get up, wake up, get back onto earth, get back into the human experience. But Mathis is still trying to see if he can sucker punch Ali and knock him out. Ali's aware of that, and Ali's not going to let it happen.
And real quick, Keith Kimmy says he's sorry for going off topic. He's asked a couple questions, including about Mike Tyson and Roy Jones. We will answer those at the end of this show. So just hold on. Any questions you have, throw them out there, and we'll give it a shot at answering it. This is a fight where Ali caught a lot of hell for not going for the knockout, Chris.
No, he absolutely refuses. By the end of the 11th round, had there not been a bell, it would have been over. Mathis wouldn't get up. But for a minute later, he goes out there and Cosell's right under him. He goes, "This man's dazed. This man doesn't know where he is. This is a terrible situation." And Ali, absolutely, just he won't knock him out. He won't hurt him. There's like I said, there's a kindness and a sweetness that goes beyond what you could think. The fans aren't going to like it, obviously, because this is really almost treated like an exhibition fight, although it's a real fight. I just think, again, it was Ali making his own decisions of what he felt was the right thing to do. I'm not saying Ali's the same. I live in Phoenix. Phoenix has a lot of dislike and anger toward Muhammad Ali, or they used to, the old boxing crowd. They're all dead now. But
all right, real quick, we've got a question from Buddy Gibbs. Not on Mathis, but it is this era heavyweight, so we'll go ahead and we'll tackle it real quick. Sure. Does Quarry beat Chuvalo in a return go a few months later? And why so either way?
I wouldn't know other than Quarry would probably box a little bit better, I suppose, against Chuvalo and stuff. But Chuvalo would get nasty and dirty and mean and stuff like that, and because he'd be right there saying, "I just got this one thing ahead of me, and I get to face Joe Frazier for the heavyweight championship. And this one thing ahead of me, Chuvalo could be a nasty person, which could be good in a heavyweight boxer. I think he would give. Quarry is a little bit more follow the rules kind of guy, and Chuvalo is gonna not play by the rules. What that means, I don't know, because Quarry was in such a lot of experience to go along with where he's at then too. So Quarry's a much better boxer and can still hit hard and such. So I don't know. I just think Chuvalo's gonna be incredibly dirty, and Quarry better be dirty with them, or they don't allow that in the amateurs. We allow it in the pros. Heavyweight boxing, let them go at it, right or wrong.
It's right, Chris, because it's a fight. I want to see people get dirty.
Except this one. This one's not a fight anymore. Ollie's just not gonna knock him out. I won't do it. Won't do it. Won't do it. Won't do it.
Yeah.
It's his record, because then Ollie doesn't get a knockout, and then people say, well, that's because Ollie doesn't hit hard. Well, he doesn't hit hard on Mathis because he knows if he just touches him to the nose, the guy's going to fall down. He doesn't want to embarrass him. He doesn't want to hurt him. He didn't do this to get a win on Buster Mathis because it's going to help him fight somebody. Quarry maybe needed to beat Mathis to help him in life. Ollie did not need Buster Mathis for anything at this point in life.
No, he was just keeping busy trying to get Joe Frazier in the ring.
Yeah, that's it. That's all he was thinking about. And Mathis had already realized it wasn't going to happen for him.
All right, let's go to Buster Mathis's fight right after this was interesting. It was a guy by the name of Claude Humphrey McBride who was undefeated. I think he was like 25.
19 knockouts. Oklahoma.
Yeah, and Buster Mathis weighed in at 280. McBride weighed in at 260, and Mathis scored a quick three-round TKO.
And let me tell you something when you look at numbers. McBride may be 25-0-0, 19 knockouts. I don't like his chances against Mel Turnbow or Bob Stallings.
Or even James Beatty. He's not going to lose any of them.
Yeah, you can look at records, or you could do what Madison Square Garden's when they pair up people, they actually look at the fighters and recognize what's going on. And numbers can be deceiving.
And in the end for Buster Mathis he fought Ron Lyle, who was a young up-and-coming fighter at the time in Denver, Colorado, Lyle's hometown. Mathis actually dropped almost 20 pounds from his fight against Humphrey, came in at 263, but Ron Lyle basically just blew him out of the water.
Well, I'm not sure exactly like that, but let me just give it's his last win with McBride. He hit a right hook, knocked McBride down in the first round, a guy with the undefeated record. In the third round, an uppercut knocked McBride out. Now, against Lyle didn't do anything in the first round. It was only 2 rounds. He didn't do anything in the first round. But the second round, he'd been setting up the left hook. And when he landed it, he landed it. And Mathis was in trouble. And he put him out in that second round, just setting up for it. But he didn't do anything in the first round. But this is a setup thing. And he knew it. And Lyle was a hell of a great heavyweight. It turned out. Nobody knows the time when somebody's young. We dealt with him last week and he was old. This time he's young. And Buster Mathis is old. Not even old. Mathis isn't even 30. And that was Mathis' last fight. Mathis' pro career over before he's 30. An amazing amateur boxer when he was 17. But
a lot of that I would think would be the way he did not take care of himself.
Yes. His drugs, food is a very serious drug and addiction too that people give up in life and want to eat sometimes. And girls, I know a lot of girls that sometimes when they're really sad, what they want to do is take a big thing of ice cream and hurt themselves rather than eating ice cream for pleasure. No, you're hurting to hurt yourself. And Buster Mathis, I think I have to wonder about this cut hand that wouldn't allow him to go to Tokyo because Frazier busted his hand too and didn't tell anybody and won the gold. And Mathis would be facing, I hate to say it, lesser competition, at that point in world history. The Americans were the toughest competition at that point. But Mathis, when he got hurt, it wasn't good. Bleeding, real queasy, whether it's his bleeding or somebody else's bleeding. There are ticks and quirks to Buster Mathis, but I also think the whole thing can be the side of luck is I don't know if the Cincinnati Reds of 1919 need help to win the World Series. I don't know if they need the other team to tank. I think they're a really good team. I think they would have won anyway. Buster Mathis, I don't know what he would have done. I loved what you said about the 80s. That was so great. He would have won the title and lost the next bout like everybody else. But he had two guys ahead of him, Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali, and they were better than him, and they were better than everybody else. And it sucked.
Well, hell, how about this, Chris? Not even the 1980s. If you put him in the 1960s and there's 3 title belts, he might win a belt.
Oh, absolutely. In the first fight. Thank you, Mike. Absolutely. I didn't even think about shit like that. Absolutely. If you got the WBA, the WBC, the IBF, the WBO, and ABC makes up their own names for whenever they're doing tournaments. You're right. You're going to win something. In fact, McBride, whatchamacallit, Mathis is supposed to be for some sort of title. I didn't even bother to learn or bother. Come on, it's not for any title. You know, the best fighter who weighs under the best fighter under 300 pounds in Oklahoma. I mean, what title are you fighting for? But you're right. Titles are given to everybody, and that's why I don't mean anything. The old Olympics, thousands of years ago, there was one fighter. One fighter stood above everybody, and now everybody, gets a medal, and nobody watches it.
All right, Buster Mathis died at a young age, and a lot of that's the life he lived.
Yeah, and also I felt really bad for him because his son fought Riddick Bowe, and his son was undefeated, and Riddick Bowe is coming off the loss to Holyfield, and that was not a very nice portrayal of Buster Mathis Sr. for a guy who was very shy of being in the public spotlight and couldn't go to the fight because of illness and stuff. To say, well, the guy couldn't take a punch, the guy couldn't throw a punch, say all these shitty things about him. And the thing is, it reinforces what Buster Mathis sort of thinks of himself. Except the one thing he decided on before he died was, I'm not stupid. I didn't get the education I wished I had. That doesn't make me stupid. A person that gets a skilled trade job, you know what? That's just as good. That's a different kind of education, but it's important. And it meant enough to him that he made it kind of the focus of his life. And it all came again from the idea of him getting the psychological stuff. It all happened too young. He didn't really have a family system and stuff. He didn't feel good about himself. And then he had bad advice maybe on who you should be fighting before this title thing, and how it all went wrong. Although it didn't go so wrong that this guy shouldn't be remembered as a great heavyweight. Okay, 2 guys are better than him. Well, that sucks, but that's going to happen in almost any profession.
Well, and then Frank chimes in that Frazier said all Mathis talked about was missing his girlfriend and how he was actually relieved when he hurt his hand and couldn't fight in the Olympics. And that'll tell you a lot about the mindset and mentality of Buster Mathis. Thanks,
I didn't know that, but I believe it. I believe that stuff was going on in Buster Mathis' head that kept him from going on to Tokyo, and that nothing would detract Frazier's focus. They were completely different in that way, which is why one is a champion and one just has a tremendous amount of talent. And really, he's a champion as an amateur. Don't forget, Mathis still won. He is a champion. He just didn't win. He just didn't go to Tokyo.
All right. Anything else on Buster Mathis before we go to a couple questions here that viewers have asked?
No, I think we did, kind of ran through everything other than the one thing I was trying to locate and find was, we remember when we did Michael Spinks, he went 12 years between losses. So I was trying to figure out Buster Mathis's last loss before Frazier, and I couldn't quite get there, though. I don't even know. Just because you didn't win the Nationals, not everybody can travel. I know that you have to have money a little bit to do all that. So I don't know that he lost along the way. All I know is I couldn't find a loss. And Box Rec was so lazy, or they didn't care about that stuff. They just want to look up Frazier. And in the process of looking up Frazier, they jotted down the names of everybody else in the tournament. And that's how Buster Mathis has a 4-0 record with no knockdowns on Box Rec's record. They're caring about Frazier, not Mathis, but they jotting down notes. But I knew the guy had to be that skilled as a boxer. I knew the guy had to fight Golden Gloves. Went back to Michigan's the year before. This is our star. He's the star of the program before the tournament's begun. So you can go back in another year because you don't just have a reputation like that from nowhere. So I know someone around at least 17 years old. The guy was a hell of a boxer already. The Detroit Cops helped him out. He did math statistics. Detroit Cops encouraged him toward boxing. Detroit Lions, they just had a great defensive line. Otherwise, they should have been picking him up. But, number 71 should be in the Hall of Fame, Alex Karras. Anyway, go ahead and talk about it.
All right. We had Keith. Let me find it. What's your opinion of Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr.? Did you watch the fight, Chris?
No.
You didn't miss a damn thing. You didn't see that? Where you been, Chris? You been under a rock?
Well, for 2 months I laid on the ground, didn't do anything, so I know that.
Was it in front of Walmart so you could check out all the sexy women in the yoga pants with the knotted
I should have
skis
done
on
that.
their thighs?
There's a film where a girl lives in Walmart for a month, Natalie Portman, and I could have done that. No, I just laid here and just.
You're not Natalie Portman. They're not going to let you live in a Walmart for a month.
No, they're not
Chris.
gonna let me live for. No, I'm not Natalie Portman. No, they boot my ass out. No, absolutely.
Well, this is Mike Tyson fought a pay-per-view exhibition against Roy Jones Jr. They went 8 rounds, half-assed. They scored it a draw. My opinion on it, Keith, is this. I'll watch Mike Tyson fight Roy Jones Jr. if it's actually a fight. What I saw was Roy Jones tired after about 2 minutes and Mike Tyson going out of his way not to hit Roy Jones in the head and knock him out. I don't find that entertaining. If you're going to fight. I don't care how old you are. We're in America. You had the freedom to do whatever you want. So if you're in your right mind, I think you should be able to fight. Over 1 million people bought the pay-per-view, Chris.
Wow.
And
a lot more money than me to throw around.
Yeah, 1 million people bought the pay-per-view, so we'll probably see it again. I'll watch it again if it's a real fight. So maybe have him fight Evander Holyfield.
But this is important to point out about Tyson is the cult of personality, and that the real story of Mike Tyson is how Customato and Jim Jacobs and all those people worked together, and the other guys that worked with Jim Jacobs, how they worked together to build a name and a reputation for Mike Tyson. This is a thought out plan to build cult personality.
The thing I remember about Caton and Jacobs is I like his first fights, like against Mercedes, guys like that, his first 6 or 7 fights, they filmed them. And then I think that they put together a VCR tape and sent it out to every newspaper, every news station in the country to get people's attention with him.
Absolutely, give away free fights. You're right. Absolutely, what you said. How they rolled the media by putting together his fights and showing them, and then when they got it onto television for free, the public could see it of this guy who knocks everybody out. And in the end, we said we don't know how he done against Finkel and Thomas, or we don't know how he done against Tim Witherspoon. We don't know some of these people, but we know Mike Tyson was great in his prime. It's not to knock him down. It's just there's a buildup, and that buildup sometimes you forget the people that are on the wrong end of the buildup that it may not be them.
Well, I think that my problem with Mike Tyson and Buddy, I agree with Buddy. He didn't want to see either more of either guy, and he was a fan in their boxing days. I was a fan too, but there was a lot of things I didn't like. You know, Roy Jones talking about he didn't care. He just wanted every belt. He didn't want Darius Michalczewski's belt. They never fought. I'm not saying Michalczewski could have beat him, but they were the 2 best light heavyweights in the world. It didn't happen. Roy did not go to England and fight Nigel Benn. I mean, I think he beats Nigel Benn, Stevie Collins, guys like that. But a world champion, if they won't come to you, you go to them and you prove how great you are instead of fighting like Ricky Frazier, who's a New York Police Department or police officer who looked like he was going to shit his pants when he got in a ring with Roy Jones. And to me, I just think that we've seen enough of it.
I just saw.
You think he'll fight Evander Holyfield?
I saw a recent interview with Buster Douglas, and Buster Douglas went on Mike Tyson's podcast, and he was asked, "Are you afraid or what was going to happen?" He goes, "We're a couple old men. Now we're a couple old men, and we just talk about the past. You know, we're not a threat to anybody and stuff like that." So that's the Mike Tyson that Buster Douglas was talking about, where you're an old man who really doesn't want to fight and stuff, but he probably needs money and stuff like that. And let me say one more when I hear these old people talking. Larry Holmes, because sometimes I give Larry Holmes a tough time, not as a boxer, but the way his personality and stuff like that. He says these days, he says he's an old man. And you know what? He's not so angry anymore. He doesn't hate people. He hopes people don't hate him.
How about this? I think Mike Tyson is one of the greatest con artists of the last 50 years. I think that his whole career, especially after 1988, was basically a con artist. I mean, he would get up there. He would
Don King didn't believe in him.
He would bite people. He would talk all this shit about making this bitch his woman or making this bitch guy his woman.
Eat children. Oh, that's so charming.
Children, yeah, especially when Lennox Lewis.
That's a real fighter. He wants to kill kids. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Lennox Lewis didn't have a wife. Hell, Lennox Lewis is probably gay, but I didn't say it. But I mean, the fact is,
Gator Straight can kick Tyson's ass anytime.
You know what? And I guarantee you, Mike Tyson probably ain't completely straight either, just from listening to what he talks to.
Yeah, and that stuff. we don't care about stuff like that. But I will say this: that's one reason why I think our Ray Mercer. We've done a lot of these shows. The Ray Mercer show keeps being really popular. But I think one of the things that people respect about Ray Mercer was he really wanted to fight Lennox Lewis. We weren't sure Mike Tyson or Riddick Bowe really wanted to fight Lennox Lewis. While Ray Mercer, I want to fight Lennox Lewis. I want to fight Lennox Lewis. And the desire Tyson to take on. I'm not even sure he wanted to fight Foreman. I'm not sure.
If he would have wanted to fight Foreman, they probably would have fought, because there would have been no bigger fight maybe in history than 1996 Mike Tyson and George Foreman.
All right, Tyson be facing a guy not afraid of him. So why can't you beat a guy that's not afraid of you? Tyson is a bully, like Sonny Liston. A bully exposed.
Hey, Tyson couldn't beat people that weren't afraid of him, not skilled guys that were afraid of him. If you look at him, Mike Tyson, no matter what anybody says, never came from behind, never got in trouble and turned around and won a fight. He quit against Kevin McBride, and I don't care how old he was, it's still freaking Kevin McBride.
And break his arm in the final round.
That was Franz Botha, because Franz Botha was schooling his ass for 4 rounds. He tried to break Botha's arm.
Right, too.
He ends up catching Botha and knocking him out, but Franz Botha outboxed him.
No, you're right. So, both of them. That's the kind of person Mike Tyson was, besides biting a guy's ear off and his corner complaining about Holyfield. He doesn't need 2 ears to fight. I mean, what is this admiration for Mike Tyson? But you know what? It's there. I don't know why, but it is. It's good for boxing in the sense that we need a star. It's just he's not my cup of tea. I like he's just not my anything other than he was very nice. The one time I bumped into him in person, I accidentally almost knocked him over, and he talked to me like that little voice. He looked at me mean, but he's very nice to other people.
Because if you look back at him, you probably could have taken him.
Well, he's with his kids and stuff too. There's a different side of Mike Tyson, but yeah, in the ring, I got to wonder whether he really wanted to fight everybody. And it didn't appear Don King had the confidence in him. You know, he got to face, Bruno and Selden to get his title and stuff.
Yeah, and I had Peter McNeely on a show a few weeks ago. Peter's a really good guy, but I can say this for Peter: at least he went out swinging. Bruce Selden, I still don't think got hit yet by Mike Tyson.
I wasn't so sure about that either. You know, it lets me do one little thing on this. The kid, Buster Mathis Jr. Just before the bout against Mike Tyson and Buster Mathis Jr. still undefeated, his dad died in our show. And Mathis said, no, I don't want to delay the fight or anything like that. And he gave Mike Tyson two, from the heart, pretty damn good rounds that Dad would have been proud. And then, he's a little undersized to be fighting Tyson or other heavyweights.
Frank brings it up. Nobody hit lower on the break after the bell more than Tyson. But Tyson was the first one to bitch and cry because Evander Holyfield's head hit him. But especially in the first fight, most of those headbutts were caused by Mike Tyson. He's the little dude. He wasn't moving his head side to side, but he'd come in like this. And the thing that was impressive to me is Mike Tyson's supposed to be this badass. Evander Holyfield was a blown-up cruiserweight, and Evander Holyfield basically just locked him up, walked his ass back, hit him a couple times, walked his ass back more, and he basically outmanned him. It was just physically stronger and just bullied the bully.
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly what it was. And it's just people pouting over Mike Tyson losing to Evander Holyfield and not really believing what happened is what happened, that one guy's a better fighter. But is Holyfield, incidentally, I loved what Lennox Lewis said about Holyfield. Yeah, I know he's a religious guy. He breaks a commandment a day. But yeah, could Holyfield fight dirty? Absolutely. I love Holyfield. But he crossed the barriers of, just because I like somebody doesn't mean I'm going to pretend there's something else. But meanwhile, if you're going to complain about Holyfield being dirty, don't use Mike Tyson as your example. Use somebody else. Use Buster Douglas or somebody. Use anybody.
I would say this. Use Andrew Galata. He was dirty. If Evander Holyfield's in a fight, he's going to do what he has to do to win the fight. And the thing about it is this. Like I said, it's a fight. Sometimes it's dirty.
And I'll give Tyson this. For people that are Mike Tyson, I'll do this. I'll never concede he's better than Holyfield. Not in a million years. I'll concede that when he fought Andrew Galata got scared to death of him. So a bully faced another bully, and Tyson out-bullied him, scared him psychologically. But that isn't going to work against Holyfield.
Yeah, but remember this. Andrew Galata was
very mom give me a whipping when I was a kid. I ain't scared of Mike Tyson.
Andrew Galata. Oh, we have a surprise too, Chris.
What's that?
If you look behind you, you'll see Mike Tyson is now on the show. How you doing, Mike? Since you said you weren't afraid of him.
Oh, well,
It was a joke, Chris. Loosen up. All right, really quick. We had a question.
I wasn't afraid of him. You know why I wasn't afraid of him? Because in Phoenix, he was in Joe Arpaio's country, and Joe Arpaio had him over a leash. So you don't mess with Joe Arpaio, or if you're nice to him, you can do whatever you want. You get in trouble with him because he's the law, but he's not an honest person. So he was under control of Joe Arpaio when I met him. So he wasn't gonna do nothing to me. I was safe, but only because Arpaio was a crook.
William Frank Henderson asked a question earlier in the show. Since it wasn't about Mathis, I figured we'd just bring it to the end. What do you think of Adolf Pruitt?
I don't have any. I'll let you.
All right, Adolf Pruitt was a hell of a fighter. He asked him to rate him, and Pruitt, to me, the thing I most remember about Pruitt was the fact that he fought Niccolone Loci. He went the distance with Loci, and actually, I think he lost by 3 or 4 points on most scorecards. He was cut over his left eye in the 3rd round. His corner had it under control by like the 5th. And in spite of the loss, he was impressive enough that he was still ranked #1 by the WBA, and they actually voted him Fighter of the Month. And when you look at his career, he had a win against Hedgeman Lewis, who was a damn good fighter. And then I think he ended his career. He lost to Jose Napoles for the WBC and the WBA World Welterweight titles. And then he lost to Armando Muniz, who I also got the pleasure to interview on the Legends of Boxing show. I would highly recommend. He is a great man. He was a hell of a fighter. And one of the biggest robberies in boxing history was when Muniz got the fight against Jose Napoles stolen from him. But Adolf Pruitt was a hell of a fighter. And Niccolone Loci, to me, is one of the 3 or 4 best defensive fighters that ever lived. And Pruitt could hang with him. So if he could hang with him, he was a hell of a fighter.
And I'll say this, that it's just the way kind of I am. Colleen would say to me, why are you watching the same boxing about 5 times? And I go, that's because I don't have time to watch it 6 times. I don't care what I think I know. I got to have it all go through me as another filter to really feel in my heart that I've given somebody a fair shake and not been overly kind to them. I like to think we said Buster Mathis had flaws, and he didn't deserve to be one of the top 2 in a sense, but he's a hell of a lot better than people remember him, and Michigan should be ashamed of themselves the way they treat their fighter.
Yeah, because if you watch Kubrat Pulev against Anthony Joshua, I can tell you this. Buster Mathis, even though he was 40 years ago or 50 years ago when he fought, would have whooped the shit out of both of them.
Yeah. You know, and again, I've stood up for the people like we did in this show, the Mel Turnbows and the Bob Stallings, because you get a chance to look at who they're fighting and what's going on, and the tough guys, who they beat or not beat. I don't know if I'd say would Bob Stallings beat Ernie Shavers knock him down. No, I wouldn't guess that in a million years going into it, but that's what happened, and it doesn't surprise me after it happens, and that's what a historian does. We deal with things kind of after it happens, and at the same time try to remember what people thought before it happened.
Yeah. So who do you want to do next week, Chris?
Well, I like to do Amos Johnson. I think I got it right. The guy beat ABC's tournament used to drive me crazy because they kept saying the last guy to lose to Ali was Jimmy Ellis, and I knew it wasn't true. I knew that Amos Johnson had taken him in '59 because it's a high-profile loss. Ali was a star, even as an amateur, and I thought he fought some. There's some film of him, you know, facing Liston and other people. So it's good film. He fought good opponents. What went wrong? Kind of the same thing, but is there a path that was smart? If he wanted to face Muhammad Ali again, Ali wouldn't fight him again. Ali never really fought people who gave him too much of a tangle. He didn't fight Billy Daniels again. Didn't fight Sonny Banks, knocked him down. Didn't fight Foreman again. That doesn't mean Ali deserves anything but the greatest title. It just means that we can look at things, and Johnson beat him fair and square, and meanwhile, nobody's even mentioning that he beat him.
Yeah, but we can also give Ali this. What is the benefit to him to rematch Sonny Banks or Doug Jones or guys like that?
Yeah, Sonny Banks I can understand not rematching. Doug Jones I'm not sure, and Billy Daniels, you know, Foreman, you kind of think maybe he should have, but who knows? I don't really want to, you know, not say nasty things about Ali. But if you didn't want to say him, I had a couple other thoughts, because Buster, I was so scared I was going to call him Buster Douglas at some point, and it didn't. We could do the other Buster Douglas, or Too Tall Jones. Nobody does a Too Tall Jones show.
There's not enough footage on the Too Tall Jones, is there?
That's the problem. That would be the problem. We'd probably been
Because
better.
I remember watching him fight. I think it was like 1978 or 79 against like a Mexican named Yaki or something. The guy was like 5'10", and the guy smacked Too Tall all over the ring, and they gave it a draw, and then Too Tall went back to the Cowboys.
Yeah, and he got knocked down, stuff like that. I thought the great example of a Too Tall Jones is some people think if you're wouldn't imagine a guy that's such a big, talented athlete, strong guy. You would think he's still got to go in there and face his dues, just like everybody else. And he hadn't done that, and that's why boxing can be dangerous. And Buster Mathis definitely faced his dues. He did face Frazier those 2 times without a lot of experience in the boxing ring.
All right, so who do you want to address last
How about
time?
Buster Douglas, maybe?
Buster Douglas. All right, next Sunday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time, we'll be live again on Twitch, Periscope, YouTube, Facebook with the Old Time Boxing Show. Our career of Buster Douglas will be what we talk about there. Make sure you check back with us then. You can follow us on Grueling Truth at Grueling Truth. Make sure you go to manscaped.com, promo code TG20 to get 20% off your first purchase and free shipping. So for now, for Chris Shelton, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening and watching to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.